Welcome to the Millennium Counseling Center podcast, where hope is yours, it's time to soar. I'm your host, Orrin Madison. It's time to rise above and celebrate healing, hope, and recovery with the Millennium Counseling Center team.
Special thanks to Kaz Source, who helps us with the production of our podcast. If anybody needs any help or looking into podcasts, please reach out to Kaz Source at kazcontent.com.
Thank you for tapping into some Untapped Keg, our podcast about sobriety, recovery, mental health, and everything in between. I am one of your hosts, RJ Zimmerman, here with my good friend Montee. How you doing, big guy?
I'm good, man. I'm excited. I'm out here in Virginia with you right now. Gonna spend some time with the family. I'm excited, but also I'm excited as well because we got ourselves a very special guest today. Someone who I've had the opportunity of speaking to a couple times. And an awesome guy with an amazing story and also an awesome business as well. And it's going to be just good, man. So folks who are tuning in, we appreciate it. And it's going to be a really great show. RJ, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Yesterday I was a little tired. I think I caught a little bit of cold from my kids, but they're getting better. I got some sleep last night that was pretty decent. So I'm feeling good this morning. Got coffee. That's always a plus. So we are excited today to be joined by Derek Bylsma, Executive Director and owner of the Millennium Counseling Center in Chicago, Illinois. Very excited to have you, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm surviving here as we go into the winter in Chicago, but really happy to be joining you guys, and I've gotten a chance to get to know Montee a little bit better over the past several months, and really enjoyed his book, and just love his story and what he's doing. And so anything that he's got going on, I'm always happy to be a part of, and look forward to a good conversation and continuing to try to get the word out there a little bit about all these things that we live in with substance abuse and mental health, and people kind of facing tough times. So looking forward to it. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. I think first off, thank you for your kind words. Thank you so much, man, for reading my book and soaking all of that in. I truly appreciate that. Got a question for you off the top of my head right now. What's the temperature like right now in Chicago?
I think yesterday it was a little bit over 40. It was a little nicer yesterday. We had sun, and today though it's raining, and so it's colder today. So I think we're probably mid 30s, maybe 40 if we're lucky. So we're heading into that time of year where it just makes you appreciate summer.
You're heading to that time of the year where it kind of flips, where the further you get from the lake, the colder it is, instead of the closer you get to the lake, the colder. So I grew up on Lake Michigan, so I know exactly what that's like. So.
That's right.
So Derek, tell us a little bit about your journey to starting the Millennium Counseling Center.
Sure. Yeah, I like many have kind of got into this world based on some personal experiences, either for my own or for family and folks like that. So I've noticed that a lot of people who kind of work in this space have some sort of personal connection to recovery or mental health. So I'll tell you the quick version of my story, and if you have any questions. But I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Ultimately, ended up at Wisconsin, playing soccer there. So I played soccer at Wisconsin.
Upgrade.
And loved my experience there. Have really still a bunch of really good friends, former Badgers and folks that I hang out with. I meet up with a group of guys. RJ, you'll appreciate this. But every year there's a group of 5 of us that meet up and go to a Packers game somewhere in the country. So San Francisco, New Orleans, Tampa. We've kind of traveled the country getting together and going to games. So that's a good time. And then so I ended up at Wisconsin and had pretty much had a pretty good life, to be honest. I had really good parents, and things had gone well for me. I did well academically and had done well in sports, and kind of continued that after college. I played afterwards a little bit, kind of professionally for soccer back before the MLS was around. Played for a few years, did that, and realized that I wasn't going to make a career out of that. So got into the business world in staffing and recruiting, headhunting, and ultimately did pretty well there. I got several promotions and moved up with a big Fortune 500 company, Robert Half, and eventually broke off from there and started my own company. And did that a couple times. We started a couple different companies in my 29, 30 ages, and ultimately got married to the woman I was dating at the time. And then, things started to, I had always been a partier. I had always been a guy who went out, but it had never really affected my life much. I think sports kind of kept me in line, so it couldn't really get too out of hand. I mean, still out of hand, but not to the point where it was, having any major consequences for me. And then in my early 30s, our business kind of went through some ups and downs, and my marriage went through some ups and downs. And I think ultimately, I'm not sure that life had that much to do with it. I think ultimately I just started drinking more than I should have, and got to a point where I couldn't quit on my own. Ended up going to treatment. I went to a treatment center out in California, and came back and have been sober since. So I came back from treatment, and that's 17 years ago when I got sober. And then went back in. I had a bunch of stuff to rebuild at that point. I went through a divorce. I was in really severe financial troubles, and didn't have many options. So I started another recruiting company, which did pretty well, and got out of debt. And then decided as a second career to go back and get my master's in my mid-30s, and went back and got my master's in clinical mental health counseling. I actually started at Millennium as an intern. So Millennium was owned and founded by an amazing woman named Ann Foster, who has been in the community for lots of years. And she had started Millennium over 20 years ago, or about 20 years ago. And then so 10, 12 years ago, I came in as an intern and kind of moved up, then got hired on after my internship, became a senior counselor. I think 4 or 5 years ago, I took over as executive director. And then a couple of years ago, myself and my partner, Orrin Madison, ended up buying Millennium from Ann Foster, who went into retirement or semi-retirement. And that kind of brings me to here. But I'm very passionate about substance abuse, any type of compulsive behaviors, addiction. But in addition to that, something that I think we always need to pay attention to is mental health. I think sometimes people separate those two, and they think you fall into one or two of the categories. And I think most people, generally kind of bridge both sides of it, to varying degrees. And I'm very, very, very passionate about this. And it was one of the things that drew me to Montee. I had saw his book and actually sent him an email and said, "Hey, listen, I'm a former Badger, and I followed your career on the field, and I'm really impressed that you came out and put out the story that was really heartfelt and honest and vulnerable, and all the things that we need from people who have been followed for a long time for people." And I think that I give you a lot of credit, Montee, because I think that it's people like you that can really help this world, because people look at athletes very highly in this society, as they should, hardworking, and it tells a lot about a person if you can be successful on the field. But I think that, anytime we can have somebody advocating for this, and Montee, I know that's what you've made your mission now, is to advocate for this and to, make people aware. And so I'm pleased to be on here. I'm pleased to be connected to you guys. And, I think we're all on similar journeys, and if we can kind of band together and try to, and it's working, right? It's working. People are, you see AJ Brown comes out the other day, and you've got, you've got other folks who are just addressing it.
Calvin Ridley and
Calvin Ridley.
Doesn't start there.
Simone Biles. I mean, it's awesome. Derek, again, thank you. My goodness, man, it's very humbling. It truly, from the bottom of my heart, is so humbling. Hearing your words, and I just have a significant amount of gratitude for you, man. So thank you so much. But I want to dive a little bit into the reason, for you, and we don't have to get too in depth about all the mistakes and all that stuff. That's sort of irrelevant. We really want to showcase your resilience, like of being on the ground, being at your rock bottom, and what sparked that movement for you to go into treatment, to stay in treatment, right? And to come out of treatment and continue on this journey to where you are today. So we would love to hear if you can please provide us with that a little bit more about, what motivated you? What was that motivation? What was your why in that moment?
Yeah, it's interesting. You think back and you look at these things that were going on in your life and wonder, in working with folks who are struggling with the same things, you've got terms like rock bottom and things which are true, right? We kind of hit our bottom, and but the question always is why wasn't it enough when, right? Like you have these different things that happen, and from now, right, I can look back and say, how was that not a eye-opening thing, right? And so when I got sober, I was in the process of my wife was leaving me. Ultimately, my business partner was kicking me out of the company because he had been, kind of carrying us for a while. I was really unhealthy. I had, always been an athlete, and I was overweight and just really unhealthy. And then my financial situation was terrible, and it was all, like many people like us, I had created this narrative that I wanted people to see. I had created this world of how I wanted people to view me, and behind the scenes, it was really messy. And I think that I had people throughout the year say to me, Derek, it's all going to catch up to you at some point, because I was crazy. I did, I just was. I felt like it always would work out. It didn't, even if it didn't make sense, I felt like, and it did. That was the crazy part about it. It always seemed to work out for me. I was like one of those guys who just thought I was really lucky, and I could kind of do. I wasn't like, I wasn't violent or even like kind of visibly impaired a lot of the time. I mean, I think a lot of the folks who knew me didn't necessarily, think anything or were too worried about it, but it was behind the scenes. It was things, so I think, Montee, to answer your question, I think when it started to become, more dishonest, I guess, when I started to hide it, and it wasn't a social thing, from a drinking standpoint. And I just felt like I was kind of breaking down. And eventually I had several people come to me, including my mom, and say, hey, listen, we're really worried about you. Where that had kind of, I had alluded that for a while. But I did not want to go to treatment. And, one of the interesting things that I look back on is I remember thinking this is I wanted to go to a treatment center that also dealt with mental health. And the reason for me at that time is because I didn't know it, but I think I just wanted it to be anything other than alcohol, because if it were alcohol, then that means I would have to take that out of my life. Right. And, so I was okay with having some, any other thing going on with me, but I just didn't want it to be that. So I think it was, 6 or 7 days once I was within treatment that I kind of acknowledged really what was going on in my life and had a chance to step away a little bit and, got some of the substances out of my system. And then I think, coming back, I was just really beaten down. And I think that I had to do something, which I often ask people to do with me. And I think it's one of the hardest things is I had to find a few people that I trusted and people that I thought I could rely on. And I had to just have faith in the fact that what they're telling me was true. They're saying, here's the things you need to do and your life will get better. Right. And it's what I do now all the time. And I say to that, to straight up to people, I say, listen, the hardest thing right now is you have to have faith that what I'm telling you is actually true. And if you can do that, the little secret that I feel like I know now is that you don't have to be stuck there. There's a path out, a path out that I didn't think existed. But ultimately why I came into this field is because I saw how much better my own life had gotten in, just a few short years. Right. And so I kind of felt like I had this little, I guess to use the terms they use these days, like a cheat code for life, right? It was that there's a process that you can go through. And if you follow that process, then your life will get significantly better and you can be happy and content. And it doesn't mean life is perfect and it doesn't mean that there's no problems, but it does mean that a lot of this kind of the issues that we're creating ourselves are no longer there. So I think that's kind of what got me there. I think that what kept me there is I met a lot of really good people. I made friends with people in the recovery community. But the biggest thing is I think that the same thing that led me to doing well in sports and school and also to struggling with the substances is, with recovery, I was all in. I typically don't do something kind of halfway. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to be extreme about it. And one of the traits that we know kind of exists amongst us. And so I went all in on recovery and to the words that you kind of hit on, Montee, is I had to get humble and kind of understand humility and realize that things don't come free, and it's not just lucky or unlucky, that we kind of have to create that luck. I mean, I still have some beliefs in kind of how things work out that way, but at the end of the day, we have the ability to affect a certain amount of things on this planet, and we have to figure out which ones those are, and then we have to put a strong effort into kind of creating the outcomes that we're looking for. But we also have to understand that we don't have all the answers, and sometimes we just have to have faith and believe that if we do the right things, it'll work out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll let you go, RJ, on this. That was heavy.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. That's it's not always easy to get in front of people that you just met, like me, or the people who may be watching this, and tell about yourself and your vulnerabilities. But one thing that we talk about here is finding like our new a new hobby or some place to put your energy that you used to be able to put drinking. Was there anything new that you picked up a lot as you were hitting recovery? And I know that you said you started a recruiting business. So was it you put yourself into work a little bit? That's what I did at the start. Was I like put myself all into work? And
yeah, I think I started with the things I knew. I had gotten to a point where I really wasn't playing soccer anymore, and I was also a guy who loved playing pickup basketball, and I wasn't doing that anymore because I was spending all my time figuring out other ways to either be working or drinking or problem solving the problems that I was creating. And I think that I went back into a few things pretty heavy. I went back into sports again pretty heavy. I was in early recovery. I was playing soccer 5 days a week again, and kind of got back in shape, which was really good for me because it helped the self-esteem. I think one of the things that when people talk about the consequences of these things, you often hear that people talk about relationships and they talk about, employment and they talk about health. But I think one of the biggest things that we need to continue to talk about and kind of really focus on is people who struggle with any of these things, whether it's mental health or substance abuse or any other type of compulsive behaviors, that I think maybe the most severe consequence of that is the breakdown of how we feel about ourselves. We feel so bad about ourselves, and yet we put it out to the world that everything's great. And meanwhile, and that's kind of sometimes when you see families and they're saying like, oh, well, we need to apply more pressure on this person. If we do that, then they don't even know they're doing something wrong. And at the end of the day, we may not consciously know it, but deep down, we all know, right? Yeah. We all know that we're doing things that aren't good for us. And so I tried to find things that would help me build that up again. I was aware of that. I understood that was one of the things that had been broken down. And so soccer was a good one. It had always provided a lot of positive things in my life. And then I also, as you said, starting the company was really out of desperation. I was several $100,000s in debt, and I could have gone out and gotten a good paying job, but the truth is I needed a good paying job wasn't going to get it done. It was going to take me, 25 or 30 years to get out of the hole I had. So I kind of had to swing for the fences a little bit and start a company that I thought had it was risky, right? It was a risky move. And I fortunately it turned out, and the company did well, and we did well, and it allowed me to do now what I think is become my life's work, which is just to work with people who are struggling kind of across the board. And but yeah, I'd say soccer, work, And I think I just threw myself into recovery. I mean, I think I took a lot of that energy and I went straight there, and I went to meetings and I got to know people in the community, and I allowed myself to connect to people. And the freedom of being able to just be honest. One of my favorite quotes is the best thing about telling the truth is you don't have to remember anything, right? And it's beautiful, because that weight coming off me of having tried to remember what I said or where I was and all that kind of stuff, and I didn't need to do that anymore. I was like, wow, what a great way to live, and so that's made life a lot easier for me.
Absolutely. So. My goodness, man. I think I love what you said. Everything that you said, I love. But you really struck a nerve in a good way. Of when you talked about the whole self-esteem part of it. I do think that it plays a very pivotal role, in my opinion, in folks' recovery journey, or even jump starting that recovery journey. Because as we all know, the hardest part is at the beginning, right? The hardest part is being a week in. Hardest part is being a month in, because you're like, okay, is this something I'm going to be able to do for the rest of my life? And I do think self-esteem is a huge part, because some programs out there, right? We know of some of those programs where they are strictly for folks in recovery, but all they do is work out, right? It's like this workout group that they'll work out in this facility, or they'll plan a workout in another state, just to help people to get in shape, get fit, feel good about yourself. Because as we all know, look good, feel good, right? So I guess I love what you stated right there, because self-esteem is huge, and just a big part of all this. So when we talk about Millennium, Derek, I know that a lot of our conversations that we've had, because we're both former athletes, we both understand sort of that athlete mentality when it comes to the pressures, of performing on the field, the societal pressures, maybe familial pressures that may come into play. So what are some of the things that you guys really, specialize in there at Millennium, and how do you work towards catering towards, not catering, but how do you work towards really having a hyper focus on athletes?
Yeah, we've got Millennium was kind of built on the I guess the areas of trauma and compulsive behavior disorders, and and some of that being on the process side, so eating, sex and love, along those ends, and then also substance abuse. And I think that when there's some, what I always do in society is I look for holes where we're not filling that hole, right? I look for areas where, and not so much from a business standpoint, but more from a whatever I'm trying to accomplish, and there's certain things that are set up already that are going to be helpful for that. And but I think there's always just some little missing pieces, right? There's some little areas that aren't handled that well. So one of the things we did is we started an intensive program, not specifically for athletes, but an intensive program that really tries to help people who are coming out of treatment. It's really individually based. We do a lot of individual work versus group work, and they're kind of typically in society called IOPs, intensive outpatient programs, and ours is one that's just kind of focused toward the individual, and with one-on-one counseling. We also do a lot of trauma work. Most of our staff is EMDR trained, and we're kind of known for the trauma. But then about 5 years ago, we started this division, Montee, that you're talking about. We started a division specifically for athletes. And because one of the things we saw is that the expectations on athletes, not just, kind of from life, but if they're dealing with something difficult, with athletes. And, I think sometimes people think like, they got, being an athlete's the best, right? You get free college, and people know who you are. But there's a flip side to that. And that is, I think, the expectation that when anything hard comes along, all you do is just try harder, right? You push harder, you try harder, you work more, and which works well, right? It works well for a lot of people. But if we're talking about people who have deeper challenges that they're facing, if you're talking about somebody who's truly dealing with substance abuse, or truly dealing with mental health, depression, anxiety, bipolar, any of those things, then just trying harder isn't going to get you there, right? It's not gonna get you to where you want to be. And so we kind of thought through that and said, all right, so if I'm an athlete, I'm 20 years old, 21 years old. I had worked with several former pro athletes, and that's kind of what brought this all about. I worked with a couple recording artists, and what I realized is that with these groups of folks, there was always been this idea that if you just tried harder, then you'd be okay. And they didn't really know how to navigate it through it in another way. And so we decided that the best way to get athletes to listen to us is to have former athletes talking to them. There's some sort of connection about that. And so what we did is we built a program that consists almost entirely of former Division I athletes who are now therapists. And so our former athletes turned therapists who are now master's level therapists. We will work directly with colleges or individuals. We partnered with a few colleges, and I'm really impressed with some of these schools, UIC, University of Illinois, Chicago in particular, because they've gotten way out in front of this, and they're addressing that need, and they're looking at what do our student athletes need, and so they provide their athletes mental health treatment and mental health counseling for all levels, and so I think that the athlete is definitely a very interesting one to me, because I think that there's some oversight there, thinking that if you're doing well on the field, then you must not have any problems, and that's why I connected so well with your book, Montee, is because I think that if you're a well-known name, highly successful, and then you're kind of like, well, what happened there, right? Did he get hurt? And then I think you addressed all of that, and you brought it to the forefront and in an amazing way, because it allows people to see that it doesn't matter who you are. If this doesn't pick and choose, it's not on race or religion or economics. It doesn't matter. I mean, you see people of all shapes, sizes, colors, backgrounds who deal with this, and you just never know if you're going to be one of them. And so I think if we can let more people know about it and share information and provide support, then we can decrease the idea that this is something that only hits certain types of folks, and because it's not true. And that's why I love what you're doing, because I think it's so important, and it gives people. I'm not even sure how many people out there you're helping. I'm not even sure because you're a humble guy. I love that about you. But I'm not even sure how many people out there probably are considering listening or talking about this or going to get some help, because you made it okay for them to do that. And we continue to have people who are making it okay to do that.
I mean, I got to give credit. Again, thank you so much. But I mean, with RJ in my life, and I'm not just saying this because he's a couple feet away from me right now.
Couple doors.
But a couple doors. But he knows for sure how important he's been. Extremely important in my life. I think without him and without my family, it's 100% fact I would not be where I am today. And RJ's vision with this podcast is what helps me out too. Just makes me more accountable. And so I love the fact that us three right here all have this vision, this mission to help, right? Because we get it. We understand that addiction, mental health, all of the above does not discriminate. And that's, I just wanted to throw that out there because I'm feeling really good right now. This conversation is making me feel really good, Derek.
Well, good. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, I think there's key people, right? There's key people in my life. There's amazingly enough, my ex-wife was one of the people who was very supportive, and I'm still very good friends with her. We split on about the best terms you could. And then I'm remarried now, and my wife is who encouraged me to go back to school and take a chance and supported that. And then I've got, my family, of course, and then several really good friends who are supportive. And I think the message there is that, we need to do the work. The person who's struggling needs to do the work. But the thing that I always tell the people I work with is I say to them, listen, I will work as hard as you do. If you go all in on this, I will go all in on this. But if you're going 60%, then that's what you can expect from me. So if you really want to get the most out of this, then you drive that, you control that, right? If somebody's going at it 100% and they call me at midnight, I'll pick up the phone and I'll talk to them. If somebody's, so I think that the message to the people who are in people's lives who are struggling with this is we don't need people to not hold us accountable. But I think that when people are holding themselves accountable, then we need to support that, because the people who supported me, you're exactly right. People like RJ, to you, Montee, and similar people in my life, like there's no way I would have I would have never stayed in a good place. I just wouldn't have,
Absolutely. Yeah, that accountability piece. Absolutely. Yeah. It's not as if, I am in need of that accountability, because I'm true to it, but it's helpful in the journey. It's helpful in the recovery journey, because this is an everlasting process of myself, yourself, all three of us learning about each other. I'm gonna shut up here for a bit. I want to hear what RJ's got to say.
Well, so we have someone in chat who's Jenny. She tunes in all the time. She's very she's also a streamer who talks about like feeling words and in the mental health, and she's really awesome. She has a question about do you guys include peer support in your offerings at all? Like I know you have former athletes that help the athletes, and that in and of itself is great. Like you're in recovery, that's a form of peer support, right? Being there. But how much do you think peer support really honestly helps? Montee and I are talking about this, but like the amount of, that's basically what we're providing is like peer support, that letting other people know they're not alone. And I guess if you could just, do you offer some peer support services, or do you leave those to other outside sources?
No, we definitely do. It's really important. And so we do it in a couple ways, depending on specifically to the athlete side, depending on the school that we're working with, what we do is we help them, either they have a peer support group already set up, or we help them set that up. But we understand how important that is, and how powerful that can be. We also do, when we're working with schools, we also do like a weekly basically drop-in group, which has which we don't really say much. This is all the student athletes who are there together, and so it's and that's a form of a way that we have that. We provide the structure and gives them kind of the floor to do that, and then we can find different people who are willing to step up and kind of be leaders in that space. And there's a lot of really sharp young people these days who understand this and who are willing to try to help. So it's a great question and super important. And, it's the same, if you think about it, right? It's the same reason why support groups like 12-step and things like that work, right? That's what it's all about. It's all about finding others who are facing the same thing. So yeah, it looks a little bit different depending on the group that we're working with, but it's always a piece of it. It's always a part of it. And I can tell Jenny knows what she's talking about, because it is super important and a great question to ask about. So, so absolutely. The answer is absolutely yes, we do. The form that it comes in varies a little bit, but we understand that that's necessary. And, we find people who are willing to help out with that, who are peers of the folks we're working with amongst themselves. Yeah.
So one thing that I love that you talked about at the beginning was the connection, and you knew it then, and I think we're learning more about it every year, but the connection between mental health and like our compulsive behaviors or substance dependency, abuse, and all this, and where we put that. Have you noticed like kind of how we're noticing that honestly nothing about the human psyche is black and white, right? It's a spectrum. And when we talk about we're now realizing gender is a spectrum. You don't just have man and woman, male and female. They're just these roles that we archaically put on people. Have you noticed, like with, a lot of people's recovery or sobriety, that there really is that spectrum that exists, that, and then, you find yourself on there, and how much of it's mental health, and then the environment you're in and stuff like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's what I'll talk about just kind of the substance abuse piece for a quick second, but I think you're exactly right. I think everything's on a spectrum, and I think that one of the ways that people stay unhealthy is they find other people on the spectrum who are farther down the line, and they say, well, that's that's what that looks like. That here's what an alcoholic looks like. It looks like that person, and I don't do those things, so I must be okay, right?
Yeah.
And you're exactly right. It's not black and white. And the question is not whether you're like that person. The question is whether, is your life being affected negatively, and are you having consequences, kind of amongst the things that we talked about. When I'm working with somebody in substance abuse, I spend very little time on the frequency and amount they are using. I spend much more time on the effect that it's having on their life. I had a friend of mine, not a client that I worked with, but a friend of mine, drank twice in a year, and cheated on his wife and lost his marriage, got in a car accident and got in legal trouble, and called his boss and FU'd him all over the place and lost his job. So 2 times drinking, lost his wife, got in legal trouble, lost his job. But the point was, well, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't drink twice a year. Right. And I'm like, yeah, but those 2 times have created, this much havoc in your life. And so I think that, it's the spectrum of that. I think that in this industry or this field that I'm in, I guess not industry, but I kind of had, when I first got involved in this more, it seemed like there was kind of 2 different schools of thought. There was one school that this is a genetic thing, and you either have it or you don't, and it's just a matter of time. And then there's a whole other piece that's like everything's trauma, right? It's all based on things that have happened in your life, whether it's from mental health or whether it's from abuse or whether it's from a divorce or whatever. And I think that, quite honestly, I think it can be either of those, and I also think it can be both. I think that we don't all have the same path, and I know when people were talking to me early on about trauma, I look back on my life and I'm like, I can't, my life had been great, right? Yeah. Like I didn't have something I could point to say, this is why I ended up where that I did. And so I think that, those lines are blurred for sure. And, I think that the more we move towards that understanding that these things aren't isolated and just one thing. It's kind of like this. You have somebody who's an alcoholic and they say, all right, well, I'll stop drinking alcohol, but I'm just going to smoke a lot of weed because that wasn't a problem. I didn't even like weed, so I'll just smoke a lot of weed, right?
Yeah.
And what we know is that doesn't work, right? It doesn't work, right? You very rarely, I don't know that I've ever seen somebody who has successfully switched from one substance to another and either not started treating that substance like the old one or going back to the original one in the first place. So, yes, absolutely. So.
Cross addiction. I love what you explained right there because I as you were talking, I was envisioning the Venn diagram, right? There's you're going to see about, I'm not going to throw out a percentage because I obviously don't know, but a lot of folks are going to be right there in the middle, right? If we talk about, mental health, addiction, or whether it's nature versus nurture, predisposition, what have you been exposed to in your past? That may be trying to creep its way to the forefront of your mind right now. I mean, there's a lot there. And that's why I have so much respect for folks like yourself, folks in this who've really put the work in, did the education, started their own mental health business, or whether you are just a therapist, psychiatric work at a mental health facility, what have you, because we're still learning. There's still so much more to learn. I mean, I think of the iceberg, right? We're just right at the tip, still trying to figure out so much. So again, it's just remarkable how many people that you guys have already helped, who you're going to help with the information that we still really don't really have. So it's just pretty cool, man. It really is. So speaking about Millennium, man, got a question for you. So like, since you took over, since you purchased and now you are the owner of the place of Millennium, how have those success stories been, man? I mean, obviously we're not asking for names or anything, but like helping folks out and then them reaching back out to you 6 months down the road, a year down the road. I'm sure you've had that. How has that been?
Yeah, I love it. It's why I do it, right? It's because you have this, and we have an unbelievable team. I think that getting hired with us is very difficult. It's a difficult process, and we have a lot of people that end up with us, interned with us, so we know them really well, and then we ultimately end up kind of bringing them on after they're done. But I think that I think the fact that we are top to bottom, we've got, I think, a total of 15 people now, not all of them therapists, maybe 12 or so are therapists, but I think that just, really quality people, finding people who are smart and compassionate and have some sort of life experience with this. It doesn't need to be your own personal life, but just some sort of understanding of this. People that have done their own work, people have done their own therapy. And I think that it's, I got some great advice when I began this. This was from actually my sponsor. And he said, listen, Derek, don't ever start to believe that you're the reason. We were talking about people burning out and things like that. And he said, don't ever start to believe you're the reason why people get better. This isn't you. This isn't, you're a resource. And he said, but if you're able to do that, you're also not going to think you're the reason that they don't. And I think that that's kind of the attitude that I've had is that I can provide you information. I can provide you support. I can provide you somebody who is a safe place to talk to and somebody who I know you can trust. I know I'm not going to break your trust. And we can do those things. But at the end of the day, it still comes back to the person and whether they're ready. You can get people to the best therapist in the country. And if somebody's not ready, then they're probably not going to be able to get there. So I think that when they're ready, we need to be all in. That's when we need to be, because it's so hard to ask for help. It's so hard to make that first call. When somebody calls Millennium, either myself or my partner, we call them back. One of the two of us, one of the two owners will call you back if you call Millennium and ask us about our services. And the reason we do that is because we know how hard that is. We know everybody who we work with better than anybody because we've been working with them for the longest, and we know how to get them to the right person who's going to give them the best chance at getting healthy. And I love the success stories, of course, and the statistics aren't on our side, right? It's not, the statistics aren't on our side. So what we try to do is try to change that. We try to say, all right, listen, everybody says that there's, too many people can't get well. And we say, all right, so how do we challenge that? What do we do that gives people a better odds? How do we increase the odds? And how do we give them? And part of that is being accessible and having, I think the people who work with us would genuinely understand that we absolutely care about them and that they can always reach out to us and we will provide that support. And so, I love it. I think it's such a beauty. I just think that this whole recovery overarching, not just on substance abuse side, mental health, is such an amazing, beautiful thing that, and when people used to say that to me when I was in early recovery, it would annoy me. I'd be like, whatever, this is not a beautiful thing. This is a disaster. This is why I'm here. And, but if you allow yourself to get better, right? If you allow yourself to have help, if you allow yourself to do the work, and if you allow yourself to give in a little bit and be open-minded and be willing, then there's an unlimited of positivity that we can get out of this. I'm 17 years sober, and every single year I figure out more about what I'm getting out of this that I didn't think was possible. And so I get it that sounds cheesy and that some people might be wincing when I say that because it's tough to hear when you're in early recovery. But I can say that in full confidence because I know it's not just my opinion. This is a fact. This is a fact that if you look at people who are putting in the work, 100% of them will tell you that their life is better than it was when they were living in active addiction or, active illness and mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. That's all I had right there. Yeah. Is just to agree to that part. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to hear at first, right? I've been very vocal about this. I didn't call myself an alcoholic when I first got sober. I was just, I didn't drink. I don't drink. But since we started the podcast, it was like months after we started the podcast, I finally called myself an alcoholic. And we've talked about it too, like saying it out loud, vocalizing it takes some power away from things. And it was like, that was the moment that I went from just being sober and entered kind of recovery. Like that was a moment that my mind was like, okay, it's not just the alcohol that you were using. you were using it to numb your feelings. You were using it to escape your reality. Well, why? And then, this podcast has helped me more than anything else in my sobriety. And I'm approaching 8 years, and we've only been doing this podcast for almost 2. I mean, we're like 4 months away from 2 years. So I've only been in recovery of my 8 years of sobriety for, a quarter of it. Not even close to a quarter of it. And just like removing that stigma. That's what's really exciting about seeing these athletes too, coming out and talking about it, is it's removing that stigma, and people like Montee telling his story and being so vulnerable. And like you said, giving people permission to vocalize it about themselves and use it, and knowing that you're not alone. And we've talked about that too. It really, you're absolutely right. And even up until a year and a half ago, I would have cringed hearing that, because I wouldn't have understood. And it's just, there's so much power in the words, in your words, and what you said. It really is beautiful. So there,
I do have a question.
Oh, go for it. Go ahead. Go,
No. Oh, I didn't know that you had one.
Go for
sorry.
It. Yep.
Oh, my bad, man. I wanted to get, so we received a good amount of messages, to our Untapped Keg pages, our personal pages as well. And the one that I receive a lot, Derek, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, like your own personal experiences with this. When you were maybe a couple months in to your recovery, right? And as we've talked about today, there's a spectrum with everything. So there's a spectrum with, what word am I looking for? Sorry. What is it? Wow, I cannot believe I'm drawing a blank here. When withdrawals, thank you. Wow. Spectrum with withdrawals, right? So let's say you're a month or 2 months into your recovery. And again, the spectrum, everyone has it differently. When you had that urge, when you felt that urge to get back to the bottle or get back to drinking, what have you, what was it that stopped you? You know what I mean? Like, what was it that stopped you? Like in the moment when you were like, you know what? Because again, you can no longer numb those feelings, but life is still going to happen, right? You're still going to have bills. You're still going to have people calling you who you don't want to mess with. All that stuff is still going to happen, but you can't have the bottle. So like, what in the moment stopped you from reaching for the bottle?
Yeah. I think, this brings up a really, for me, this brings up a really interesting piece of this, because I think that when people, I'll have people say, listen, I don't know if I have a problem or not. Friends, family, people I know, people that I work with, whatever. I don't know if I have a problem or not. And the first question I always ask them is, I say, tell me about the internal debate in your head. And they say, what do you mean? And I say, that back and forth, right? People use devil, angel, right? And good, bad. And I say, tell me about that. Does that exist for you? And 100% of people who are dealing with particularly addiction will say, oh yeah, it's brutal. Yeah, it's back and forth. It's brutal. And I think that one of the things that happens, kind of, I guess, philosophically, from a standpoint for people who are dealing with substance abuse, this works with depression, anxiety as well, but it's that there's not a clear cut line as to which side you're going to listen to. I think when we're all 10 years old, our good side is 90% and our bad side is 10%, or, our devil, angel, however you want to call it, but that kind of internal debate, right? Sometimes I even look at it like Congress. I look at it like we've got these two sides of Congress in our head, right. And what we want to do is and so a subject comes up and we want to vote on it, right? So to your point, Montee, I'm 3 months sober. I'm walking down the street. I walk by a liquor store, and now I've got part of me that's saying, you can't do this. You're 3 months sober. You don't drink anymore. And I got another part of me that says, what's the point? Or the outcome will be different. There's one of two reasons, right? Mm-hmm. The outcome will be different, or I know it's going to be a disaster and I don't care. I'm willing to trash everything. That's one point. Or nobody will know. I'll only drink a little bit, all that kind of stuff that comes in. And I think that the number one most powerful thing we can do is one, acknowledge that we have this internal debate in our head. Two, learn how to differentiate which side is talking. And three, never listen to the bad side. And that sounds simple, but part of that is understanding that this exists. And then to make sure that happens, you bring in a third voice, right? You bring in a third voice. So I've got one side saying I should go drink right now. I got another side that says I need to stay sober. And so what do? I call Montee and I say, here's what I'm doing right now. And then now all of a sudden the vote gets shifted, because now I've got two pieces of me saying, don't do that. And I've got one piece saying it. It's just that little time in there in the middle that we have to shift back, because there's nobody who's in recovery who really wants to use again. We don't really want to use again. We just get to that point where we can, we can make self-destructive. And here's the thing that a lot of people who don't, aren't in this world don't understand is we have the ability to make self-destructive decisions, but in that moment, they make sense. Mm-hmm. It's not just that we're saying this is, we think we somehow are able to justify that and say, this is a good idea right now. I know I just went to treatment and I'm 3 months sober, but let me tell you why this is a good idea that I walk into this liquor store and buy a bottle of booze. And it's confusing, because how do we get to that? Right. So I think, and then the other thing to your point, Montee, is I think we have to prepare for that. I think we have to do the work beforehand, because if we get to that point, think of it this way, for me to go pick up a drink, I have to listen to the addict in my head like 8 or 9 times. I have to lie to my wife about where I'm going. I have to, I have to walk down the liquor aisle. I have to bring it up to the counter. I have to, I have to make so many decisions that are not with the core of who I'm trying to be now. I have to say no to the good side of my brain 8 or 9 times before I actually put a bottle to my mouth. And so, but it gets exponentially harder as you go down the line, right? If I start with, my wife says, where are you going right now? And I say, well, I'd like to go to the store and buy some booze. And she'd be like, no, we're not doing that. And then guess what? I'm not going to drink. Yeah. But as I go down that line, but the expectation that we're going to be sitting there with a bottle in front of us and that somehow we're going to muster up enough willpower to not drink at that point is, it can be done, but I don't recommend it. We have to say no before then. We have to bring in another voice, and we have to do the work. We have to be proactive, knowing this is going to happen. And to anybody out there who's in early recovery, just because you think about it or feel like you want to use does not mean anything bad. That's normal. It's normal to want to do that. The thing we have to do is just do everything. The thing I always tell people is protect your sobriety. Protect it. You have to protect it with everything that you have. If you have to put yourself in a situation where you have to hang out with somebody that you don't even like, but it's going to keep you sober, then you do that. So we have to go to any length to protect that and make sure we're doing that. So I think it's being, it's kind of getting out in front of it. It's having resources of people to call. So it's being proactive. It's having resources of people to reach out to if we get in trouble. And then the last thing is understanding how our own inner thought process works, and being aware of how that kind of plays out, and what do we need to do to make sure we end up on the right side of things.
Mm-hmm. So Jenny asked another question that's really good. How do you refer to relapses? Because one thing that we've talked about, and we still sometimes talk about, is you still have those days before where you were sober. You still have all those victories. So how do you refer to a relapse with people that you're working with?
Yeah, this is an area that I think sometimes we get this backwards a little bit. I think that we kind of talk through things like that, that using again is it's not the best option, but it's always an option, right? It's always an option for us. And then if we do that, then we're super hard on ourselves and we beat ourselves up, and there's a bunch of shame and guilt and regret, and we kind of pound ourselves like we do with things. I feel like we need to flip that. And what I mean by that is I think that right now, as 3 of us sit here of people who are in sobriety, we have to know that this is not an option for us. This is not negotiable. This is not something that I can do it if this happens. Our thought process has to be, this is not an option, right? We cannot do this. It's just not on the table. Now, let's say whatever happens, you end up there, you go and you use. That's when we have to be kind and loving to ourselves and give ourselves support. And because shame and guilt lead us back to using again. If you wake up one day and you used the day before and you're beating yourself up and feeling terrible about it, then the likelihood that you're going to go use again is through the roof, right? So I'll tell you an analogy that I love, and this is how I look at it. This is not mine. I'm not taking credit for it, but I do like it, is that, recovery is like riding a bike from New York to California. And if you're riding the bike and you fall off in Chicago, then you don't have to go back to New York and start your journey again. But if you ever want to get to California, you can't also just lay on the ground and you can't start pedaling back towards New York. What you have to do is you have to get back on the bike and you have to continue on your journey. And I don't think relapse has to be a part of everybody's process. I do know that it is a part of many people's process. But I think we just have to understand that, to your point, RJ, we don't lose all that. We don't lose everything that we learned. And this idea that you start over again, I think is harmful to us, because I think it makes it too easy. If you're a year sober and you use, and then the next day you wake up and you say, well, I'm back to day one again, then the thought process is going to be, well, okay, well, I can start day one again tomorrow. Then I'll just drink today and then I'll quit tomorrow and then I'll quit tomorrow and then I'll quit tomorrow. And so I think we have to understand we are part of the way through the process, whether you use or not. The other thing I'll say about relapse that I think is really important is, and I mentioned this earlier, if you relapse, I mean, this is simplifying it, but it's really for one of two reasons. It's either A, you think the outcome is going to be different. You think somehow this is not going to turn out the way that it's turned out in the past. There's going to be either no one will know, or I'll drink less, or it's not going to be a problem anymore. So anyway, it's all first step stuff, right? I think that the outcome will be different. That's one part. And that's about 90% of the people relapse fall into that category. And then there's another 10% who fall into the category of, I understand this is blowing up my life. I know that this is going to ruin my life if I do this again. But guess what? I don't care. I'm done. I'm giving up, right? Mm-hmm. And there's an antidote for both of those. And the antidote for the first side is exactly what people do in first step work. And also, Smart Recovery has a great program for this as well. It's I think all the support programs kind of address this is that we have to learn how to be honest with ourselves about how this is going to turn out. Yeah. Because if we could use or drink normally, we would have been doing that a lot. We wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be in this position if we had the ability to do that, right? And then the antidote for the other side is gratitude. That's the antidote for not wanting to give up is that we have to learn how to recognize the good in our lives and value those things. And, I've always said, if I ever use again, I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not going to hide it. I don't believe I ever will. I can't see why that I would, but if I do, I'm not going to try to, in quotes, get away with it. I would go and I would step away from my marriage and I would leave my job and I would tell my friends, listen, guys, it was I appreciate you, but I'm going back. Like I said, I have never found a reason to do that, but the reason that I don't is because I realize all the gifts that I get from not doing that. So I'm not sure if that totally answers the question, but that's what I would say about it.
That most definitely answers the question. I love that analogy. We're most definitely going to be using that bad boy. Really like that. And I also think another very important part of all of that was important, but the part that right there at the end, you just stating you don't see yourself relapsing, but essentially what you're saying is, but if that did happen, you would just be honest with those who are closest to you, those who you love and trust. And I think that's a huge piece right there. Because I feel exactly the same way. I don't see myself. I really don't see myself at all. No reason for me to go back to the bottle, but I know that I got people like RJ, my parents, both of my sisters, who I could tell them if I did, and I know that they wouldn't be upset with me or angry with me at all. And I truly hope, obviously everybody out there doesn't have that, but creating that community is important. Very, very important for your journey.
There's no easier place to make friends than the recovery community.
It's so true. It's so true.
Because everybody wants more friends. We all want more friends in the recovery community, right? We've blown so many things up that we're like, new friends, fantastic.
So
right,
true.
Come on, bring it on.
So many bridges have been burned. It's like
that's right.
It's like, wait, there's a new bridge? I can use
exactly.
that.
Yeah,
It's so true.
exactly.
So Derek, thank you for answering that and getting like extremely serious with us. I have a question about your athletic program that you're putting together for therapy and helping out athletes. Where do you ultimately see this program? Like, what would you like to see at, let's say, we'll start at a high school level, because I think that's when sports get really serious. And then you go to the collegiate level. How would you like to see things a little different there? And then the professional level, what do you think teams don't take into account?
I think that most organizations, high school, college, professional, it gets better as you go up, but they try to provide resources for these folks who need those. So you look at we've got personal trainers, we've got athletic trainers, we've got academic advisors, we've got tutors, we've got so depending on the level, you've got more of those, right? And on the pro level, you've got kind of handlers, right? You got people that may just make sure you're on the right track, and I don't know what they call them. Montee probably knows in the NFL what they call them, but people who just make sure that that you're where you need to be and doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you're not getting in trouble. And I think we need to include mental health as just as serious of a thing. I mean, I will tell you that I don't know the statistics on this, but I'm almost 100% sure I'm right that there are more mental health issues in college athletes than there are injuries, meaning that the need for mental health support is at least as great, if not greater, than the athletic trainers and the health and strength and conditioning coaches and those types of things. And I don't say that to say that those aren't important. They are important. You need to have all those people. You need to have that whole process. But what I would like to see is that these organizations take the mental health as serious as they do these other things. And like I said, I mentioned UIC earlier. UIC has done an amazing job. They got out in front of us. They started talking about this several years ago, even before the pandemic. And the pandemic has just blown it up even more, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got all these folks who are struggling, and these college counseling centers, they're just inundated. They're overflowed. And so if you try to, as a student, if you try to go and get counseling at a college, they're going to say, we'll see you in 8 weeks. And not everybody has 8 weeks, right? So I would just like to see everybody make it a priority. I think we can do that. What we know how to do is we can come in and help organizations address their mental health and do it in a way that's cost effective and also really, really helpful. And we've seen that with the organizations. We work with some called soccer teams as well. And ideally, what I would like to see is that we go and do this nationally, and that one of two things happens, and I don't really care which. Either colleges address it themselves and they hire an internal team that does exactly what I'm talking about, or they utilize somebody like us who has it already set up for you. It's kind of like a business. I can either hire an accountant and internally and have somebody be our CFO, or I can use an accounting firm to do all my accounting for me, and I can outsource it. And realistically, I don't care. I don't care which way they do it. I just want to make sure it gets addressed. And I want to make sure these folks have that support, because we have seen this over the last several years that we've been doing this. The need is astronomical. It's astronomical. And the beautiful thing is with these young people, they don't have the same stigma we did. They don't have it. Yes. They talk about it freely. Most of the people who see us when we work with these colleges and clubs, most of the kids who come in and see us, and kids, I mean, some of them are 21, 22, right? They're not kids, but they come to us because one of their teammates, friends, told them about working with us, and now they come to us. And so it's referrals within the peer group. I mean, how amazing is that you can get referrals within the peer group of people who, because they had a good experience. And so that's what I would like to see. I would like to see it one of the main pillars of how we address this, the same way we do with academics, the same way we do with physical, and I think one other thing I'll say is, I think many times people think that when it comes to mental health and athletes, they think of sports psychologists. That's what they think. They go, oh, a sports psychologist. And the difference is sports psychologists generally focus on performance. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to help you with performance. And that's not what we do. We have some sports psychology in the stuff that we do, but for the most part, we are trying to treat mental health in athletes. That's what we are trying to do. And the performance is secondary, because if the person can't get out of bed in the morning or isn't sure if they want to make it to the next year, then quite honestly, the performance is irrelevant at that point. Yeah. We need to get that person healthy. And so
very true.
That's what I hope we do. That's what I hope we do. And I think people like you guys and other people speaking out against it. And, I think it's a possible thing that we can get this out there, because any of these colleges that start doing this, and some of them are doing it. Some of them are doing it. And the pro teams I know are doing it. So it just depends on, but I know we can do better.
Absolutely. I view it, Derek, and we're sort of winding down here as well too. We want to be mindful of your time, because I feel like we could talk to you forever. But I feel like I view it as, like a vehicle, a car, right? Just an automobile. You can get the new steering wheel. You can get the new system in there with the bass booming in the back, leather, Italian seats, all of the above. You can get the new pipes, new pistons, all of that jazz, right? New engine, all of that, just firing on all cylinders, right? Uh-huh. But if you ain't got any wheels on it, all that's irrelevant.
Absolutely.
Sort of like these pillars when we talk about these athletes, right? The mental health aspect of it. This mental health field for athletes has been developed, but it's more so, as you stated, on a performance based. Uh-huh. And it's like, but they're humans too. They have brains just like ours. They still deal with the same stuff that us folks outside of sports, outside of the playing days, still deal with. Or so. I mean, I really find this conversation to be important. You shared a lot of great stuff.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I think that part of the reason why they don't do it, I think the reason why these things aren't set up is because I just think people don't understand it. I don't think it's that they don't want to help, or that they I just think they don't really understand this area, and so they're not sure what to do with it. And that's why folks like us, then we do understand it. We know exactly what needs to happen. If a college calls us up and says, listen, we want to help our athletes with mental health, we can go in and tell them exactly what they need to do, top to bottom, with the way they get the word to them, with the support that they give, what the college can do, all that kind of stuff. And I think the reason why they don't is because they just don't know how to do it. I think a lot of these colleges would love to do it. They just don't know how to do it. So
I hope you're right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm afraid that even college athletes are looked at as products. And
for sure.
For sure. I hope that we can help change that mentality. And I hope that, like AJ Brown, obviously Hunter Henry, you got Darren Waller, all these athletes speaking out, Calvin Ridley taking time away and being honest about why he's taking time away. Yeah, Simone Biles in the middle of the Olympics.
Yeah.
I really hope that Naomi Osaka. I mean, we could keep going, and it's awesome that we can. Yeah. We can do that now. And it's amazing that we're seeing this process starting to happen, because it had to start in order for it to get to where it is now. And soon it's going to just keep going and get down to the lower levels, which is that it's awesome when that happens, because then it's normalized and there's not a stigma behind it. And
Yep. Yeah.
Have you ever seen Ted Lasso?
Yeah, it's funny. I've never had, one thing I want to say, I want to add one more name to that list of those people who have come out, and that's Montee Ball. I'll just say that. But yeah, I've never had so many people ask me about a show. Because I don't think I mentioned this, RJ, but I coach high school soccer now too. I coach high school soccer in downtown Chicago, and so I've never had so many people honestly ask me about a show. And the funny part is I hadn't watched it. I started it, and it didn't grab me at first, and now then the real key was when my wife liked it, and then so now it can be put on the rotation of things that we watch. So so that was good. And yeah, I love the show. It's great. I mean, they address important things. They do it in a really good way. He's a well-known, likable actor. And I think that, it's funny and it's meaningful. So yes, I like the show. And I've had so many people ask me about that show. It's funny. So
yeah, so the second season, when they bring in, spoilers, the sports psychologist, and she's there dealing with their mental health issues that actually impacts their performance positively. Like that's kind of what I pictured when you were talking about that. So that's why I asked. And it's amazing how a comedy sports show can like take things that we need in the real world like that. And it's it's unlikely places that things come from, and it's just I'm glad you've seen it. So it's like my chicken noodle soup show. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great. I enjoy it. So that's funny.
So Derek, if people want to get in touch with you, if people want to contact you, or maybe let's say athletes maybe see this or whatever, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, first of all, I'd say anybody who wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to hear from you. And I'm happy to try to help in any way I can, whether it's, working with us, but we're also very well connected in the community, both in Chicago and across the country. And I love the fact that people want to reach out. And so I want to support that completely. So I will give you there's 3 ways to reach me. One is I'll give you my direct line phone number, which forwards to me after hours. That number is 312-804-3980. You can also text me on that number and just introduce yourself. The other thing is I'll give you my email address. That's DEREK@MillenniumHope. And that's MILLENNIUMHOPE.com. And Millennium's tough to spell. 2 L's, 2 N's, right?
It
2
is.
L's, 2 N's.
As we found out earlier.
Yeah, as you found out earlier. That's right. Or you can go to our website, which is www.millenniumhope.com. And it has all of our profiles on there and ways to contact us. And but like I said, if you're thinking you want to talk to somebody and reach out. I'll help you get to the right place. We'll help you get in touch with the right people. And that's what we need. We need people to ask questions. We need people to, and we need people like us to be accessible and say, absolutely, I know you don't know me, but I'll help you. So give me a call, right?
I love that. So we'll post all that information under the video just so folks can get in touch with you immediately. Because we're very fortunate right now. We love every listener who listens in. Even if we don't really know them, we try to make sure that they know that we appreciate them. And so we got some folks that really tune in, and you may get some phone calls, man.
Yeah, fantastic. Happy to help any way I can.
And if people, reach out to us, we'll try to put them in contact with you too. So Montee said, we'll put this in the description, and both the podcast and the on YouTube. But Montee, where can people find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter at MonteeBall28, Instagram MonteeBall, obviously our Untapped Keg pages on social media as well. Please send us topics, questions, any guests you want to see. Just like Derek. I mean, it sounds like the next guest, whoever it is we're gonna have moving forward, they got quite the follow-up act that they have to have, because we really appreciate your time, Derek. But that's where you guys can find me at. RJ, where can they find you, man?
Find me on Twitter at It's Trickster, ITZ. The I is the one in Trickster. Untapped Keg. Everywhere else, try and get back to you as soon as we can. We check them throughout the day, and if you tweet at us, we'll get right back. I would say Twitter's probably our most active, but shoot us an email to untappedkeg@gmail.com if you don't want to use Twitter, or Facebook, or any of the social media apps. So thanks so much, Derek. Like Montee said, this was an amazing episode. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing so much with us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. You guys are doing great things. I love what you're doing. I think that I'm glad you've got people out there hearing you. And our hope is that we're going to go and we're just in Chicago right now. Our hope is we're going to go to different parts of the country, and both on the athlete side as well as our intensive program. And so if you're in a different market, keep an eye out for us. If you have any questions on how to do that, if there's anybody out there that has questions, just ask us and we'll answer. It's one of the best things I love about this field is that people, for the most part, just about everybody really just wants to help people. It's different. Yeah. It's different. I mean, everybody wants to help you get to the right person. And so I love that about it. So, but I appreciate you guys having me on. You guys are both awesome. I feel lucky to know you.
All right. Well, let's try to be better tomorrow than we were today, because if we didn't make it, we tried. Everybody have a good week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Millennium Counseling Center podcast. Where hope is yours, it's time to soar. Continue along your journey of healing, hope, and recovery with us next week. If you want to learn more about mental health, recovery, or if you just need someone to talk to, send us a message on Instagram or fill out the contact form on our website at millenniumhope.com. We are here to talk.